Thank you for
Good
joining us
afternoon.
today. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us on this session. I thought we are very thankful for all of you joining us among different time zones and, talking about the global startup response in the times of COVID-19. It's great to have you all among the community today, and I'd like to quickly give an introduction about all our panelists today to the viewers. Uh, Starting with quickly myself, I'm Master Grover. I head the Startup India team at Invest India. I've been one of the founding members of the team, and I'm leading it. I'm going to cover the aspect, of course, of how the Indian ecosystem, particularly with respect to technology and innovation, has responded to the current times. We are very thankful to Jamie Quiroz, Investment Officer at Amidst Brazil, for joining us. Jamie has been working with Apex Brazil since 2013, and he oversees part of the agency's effort in promoting private equity venture capital investment attraction into Brazilian funds and companies. Thank you for joining us, Jamie. It's a pleasure to have you along.
Thank you for the invitation.
We also have with us Ms. Ankita Puri. She heads Artificial Intelligence Data Science Tech Cluster for UK India Tech Partnership. It was launched to unlock the cutting edge innovation and growth for the sector in both the countries. She's taken multiple roles in the tech startup space, including having founded and scaled two healthcare technology ventures focused on clinical trials and mental health. Taken on roles as consultants, mentor, and judge to an early stage startups and tech startup programs in India and the US. It's a pleasure to have you, Ankita, along with us, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Asta, for having me.
Thank you. Next, we have a very special guest, Mr. Keiichi Onozawa from the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, representative of METI for South Asia. He's the regional representative for the ministry under the Japanese government for South Asia, and he was dispatched on July 2018 and is based out of New Delhi in present. He focuses on a variety of India-Japan economic issues, including the digital partnership, startup ecosystems, and trilateral cooperation on the platform for Japan-India business cooperation in Asia-Africa region. He's been working on contributing to the expansion of India Stack to Africa and other developing countries as well. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Onozawa. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you. Great. So without much ado, let's begin the session. And I'd like to start by, what the audience is most keen to hear about today in terms of how different countries are responding to the ecosystem. Let's see, let's start with Brazil first. And Jamie, I'm going to ask you about how the ecosystem has responded to the pandemic times right now, particularly with respect to technology and innovation.
I see. I do have a presentation here that I could share some figures with you about things that are going on. But in a general way, I really think that the ecosystem is suffering a lot. We just have received a recent research out of 150 founders from 3 countries in Latam that are at least 60% out of the respondents were from Brazil. And they are reporting that 40% of them are firing people because they are seeing that revenues are decreasing. They are also seeing a lot of growing opportunity in the health tech, in logistics, e-commerce, and I really think that the message that the majority of the founders could deliver with such research is very intense, and it was published yesterday. It is that it's not pretty much about what's going on right now during the pandemics, but it's pretty much about what's going to be the future. So with the things that we are seeing right now, what we should be doing and what kind of business we should be focusing and what business models to deliver a better society. One thing is happening a lot. We are seeing a lot of pressure on health techs to be faster on delivering solutions and to be validated. That goes for pharma, that goes for digital, and many other solutions. And we are also seeing something that was coming out in a natural way, which is the impact investing in startups related to the OSD objectives, right, from United Nations. And now it seems that this is a trend that is here to stay. related to fintech, related to sanitation, related to all the other things. It seems that because of this crisis, people remembered that there are many other troubles that were long forgotten and that need to be addressed for a better humanity. And the tech community is beginning to answer that.
No, I think you've summarized it pretty apt in terms of both the trends and about the little things we are discovering right now, and about the future trends that we should be mindful of. On that note, Ankita, what are your thoughts about the generic trends which the ecosystem may see right now, and from your experience, particularly with health, AI, data science, if you have to add anything to those sectors as well?
Yeah, so, firstly, I'd like to preface this by saying that, both the UK and India has really been focusing over the last 5 years on emerging technologies as a growth sector. I don't think that changes. I think there's a pause in the interim period because of the pandemic, but I don't think the longer term objectives change for the larger tech ecosystem. In fact, I'll take a little more positive side to all of this. In my opinion, especially if you look at emerging tech, I've seen that the adoption of technology and emerging technologies has accelerated significantly. Technologies that were considered future technologies perhaps 6 months ago are now considered mainstream. If you look at things like telemedicine, it's now being used widely in the NHS network. In fact, 80 to 90% of doctors within the network are using telemedicine and continuing work and consulting with patients. Other technologies are being used to be able to work from home. You have AI in healthcare that is being tested far more rapidly than it ever was before. So a lot of these startups that were building tech for the future are now finding a lot more opportunity to test, to pilot, and to really bring these technologies mainstream to help create stronger tech infrastructure for the future. And I think at home as well, we're all in lockdown. Schools have taken to online programs. Fitness is being done at home. Even my mom is using Zoom for her cooking classes. So clearly you're seeing adoption of tech, not just in government or corporate sectors, but also in each of our lives. And I think, and this has all happened in a matter of 2 months, 2 to 3 months. So I think there's a huge opportunity. Business models are looking to be redefined in every sector. So there's a lot of opportunity for startups to really look at how to innovate and take advantage of this time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've touched on brilliant points in terms of the sectors that are growing. We ourselves feel that, telemedicines, like you mentioned, health, ed tech, online health, everything is moving digital, and startups are definitely pivoting in these fields as well. The most surprising element for us as well, while government departments take time to adapt to these digital platforms, but a lot of work from home tools, these health helplines have also been adopted by states and by central government, and that has fast-tracked the process of adapting these innovations within these offices. And we're really proud of how the startups are quickly pivoting, not just in terms of the tech element as well, but to tap on these opportunities. On that note, I'm coming to Kichi Onozawa now. When we see that the impact of startups and innovations and the common sectors that are growing in all these countries are particularly around the same. So my question particularly to you would be on you've seen India as well, and you've seen the other side in Japan as well. How do you think these tiring times are gonna, change the partnership between the two countries, and what more can we expect from the two countries on this front?
I see. Actually, last year, I think in the short term, it is a very severe time to deepen the collaboration. For example, almost every companies have some troubles in cash flows, so it's very difficult to make a decision for investment without a face-to-face meeting. However, in the longer run, we still believe India has a very good potential to grow, especially in the startup ecosystems. For example, in the global financial crisis in 2008, we observed many Indian IT specialists came back from Silicon Valley to India, and this movement boosted the growth of Indian startup ecosystem. And compared to other emerging economy, India is growing too fast, and India has more a priority for Japan. So I think we can deepen the partnership with Japan and India. And I think in order to deepen our partnership, I think a B2B collaboration is also the key. And I sometimes got a question how to start a business in Japan or how to expand the businesses in Japan. And my answer is finding a good Japanese business partner is the key to enter the Japanese market. And I think Japan and India is a very natural partner because Japan is strong in hardware and India is strong in software. So if we complement each other, we can improve the competitiveness in the global market. And this is why we launched Japan-India Digital Partnership when the Prime Minister Modi came to Japan on October 2018. And for example, a Grey Orange partnered with Nitori, a Japanese retailer of furniture. Grey Orange provides their own carrier robots with Nitori, and Nitori can minimize the number of staffs in their warehouses. In Japan, the labor cost is expensive, so Grey Orange can create more value in Japan compared to in India. And this is a kind of a structural benefit. So even with Corona or after the Corona, we can expect this kind of complementarity. So maybe we have more chance to deepen our cooperation.
Yes, absolutely. I think you have mentioned some great partnerships that both the countries have seen in the past, and digital partnership is likely to go up going forward as well. And thank you for highlighting the strengths of both the nations. Software combined with hardware and cheaper labor costs will definitely benefit both the sides, and we look forward to more such fruitful partnerships in the future as well. On that note, I think some of you may already be aware. India has recently come up with an Atmanirbhar package or an economic stimulus package for the stakeholders to help them overcome this pandemic. While startups have been covered under the micro, small, and medium enterprises definition, but there's a lot that they can expect in terms of working capital loans, in terms of infusion of capital from the government, and in terms of extension of payments for loans that were due to be paid. I'd like to understand from you, what are the importance, of these packages, and if there is anything in particular which your country has done as a leading example of supporting this ecosystem. If you could highlight on those points, that would be great. And I think I'm coming back to Jamie again on this, on how Brazil has really helped the ecosystem, and what would you want to share about that?
I say thank you. Basically, we have seen two big movements out of the government since day one. First, it was to regulate telemedicine, that it was not allowed here in Brazil. That is really important because a lot of services were hacking the system so they could deliver some kind of pilots and understand how they could work and perform. And the second one, it was a big package out of our central bank, boosting up the opening banking movement, and also to support more startups to have access to credit and provide financial tools for the population. There was a huge movement here also from the government to provide money directly to the people that were affected. People were estimating that in the very beginning there would be around 30 million people of people that were working formally and other activities. But in the end, it showed to be around 50 million. So it was kind of a main discovery for the Brazilian government that we have 50 million people that were working without being registered outside of the system, and the majority of them without even a bank account. We knew that a lot of people in Brazil didn't have access to bank accounts, and that's terrible because you don't have access to credit, you don't have access access to a risk management profile, and many other things that are possible when you are a person that can be seen to the country. And now I think that this movement that is happening will expedite many of the developments tools out of the public policies that the government is taking. Apart from telemedicine and fintech regulation, and also this huge perception out of the population and how to access them that is being provided for these 2 to 3 months. There is also some huge packages that are being considered with the Congress and the presidency to support the cash flow out of the companies. The last one was announced yesterday. It is totally dedicated for small and medium companies. No big company can get it. The line of interest, the interest rate, is going to be very, very low, and people are asking for a period to pay of 8 months. So it will be a lot of support for the companies to pay the workforce. The only condition that they are asking is that you keep your employees for at least 2 months, and that you prove that you were a small and medium company. It's not yet to be taken. It needs to have additional regulation by the Congress, but as it is very important, we expect that our Congress will do it during this week.
Yeah. Thank you, Jamie. I think those are some wonderful initiatives that you have touched upon, particularly with respect to regulations for telemedicines to the economic package, and that it will be available to small and medium enterprises. I think those are some commendable initiatives, and I'm sure that the ecosystem will benefit a lot from it. Ankita, I wanted to understand from you now on what has been the role of UK India Tech Partnership, and what is it that the ecosystem can learn from the initiatives that your team has done for the ecosystem.
Yeah, thanks, Asta. So, we've been working quite closely with our partners in the local ecosystem in India, along with, in fact, Startup India and Agni as well, to really kind of scope and understand what are the different measures that have been taken for a COVID tech rapid response. And honestly, over the last few months, it's really been a fantastic experience to see how quickly the startups volunteered their services, rapidly changed and pivoted to new business models to create products that the government was in need of, from PPEs to ventilators to tracking technologies, testing, prediction models. A lot of great technologies out there, a lot of very close connections between the government and the local ecosystem of tech innovators, and of course, all the trade bodies that got involved. So overall, I think the response has been fantastic. In terms of the UK response, obviously, in terms of the response to the startup ecosystem, they've launched many challenge funds, many grants. In fact, in the first month after lockdown, £663 million was invested into the tech ecosystem in terms of investments in the companies. So while there has been a slowdown, and obviously the startup ecosystem and the tech ecosystem has been hurt, there are a lot of measures being taken by the government bodies to be able to allow startups to sustain and to survive, and allow them the flexibility of changing their business models, of becoming lean, to be able to survive through this, and also really be able to come out strong by innovating for the post-COVID world.
Yeah. Thank you for highlighting those, Ankita. I think great measures again, and we do look forward to, for the entrepreneurs to benefit from this as well. So if we have any queries from entrepreneurs from these nations, we're going to redirect them to the links of the policies that you folks are mentioning over here. Coming to the measures taken by the Japanese government and, METI, Mr. Onozawa, we'd like to understand from you what have been some of these key initiatives taken in Japan to help the system to come from this, to survive from this pandemic, and if there are any learnings for the rest of the world to replicate from the same. Japan has always inspired us and has always been a leader in leading technologies and innovation. So we'd like to hear from you as well on this front.
Thank you very much. This situation is a severe challenge for Japanese economy too, especially startups and small and medium-sized enterprises. So, the Japanese government announced around 70 trillion Indian rupee economic stimulus package, and the small and medium-sized enterprises, including startups, can get zero interest loans and some grant money to compensate for the loss of their revenues. And also, compared to India, Japan is more generous to the owner of the companies. So, for example, Japan has a Labor Standard Act which allows companies to cut wages by up to 40% when a labor takes a leave on holidays. And this is contrary to contrary to India, because the government of India prohibited to lay off laborers and to cut off wages under lockdown. This is too strict compared to international standard. And in addition, Japan is trying to introduce a similar system as the direct benefit transfer. Actually, I was fascinated by the achievement of India's tech. It's one of the most successful cases of inclusive growth in the world. And also Japan is trying to learn from India. The leading party in the parliament is examining to link national ID and bank account to enable cash transfer to citizens in an efficient manner. And finally, I will touch upon some technological issues. I think maybe we have some potential to convert this difficult situation into a chance. For example, Japan has a lot of traditional, too much strict regulations for telediagnostics or telemedicine, etc. However, Japanese government relaxed some parts of those regulations. Similarly, Japan is keen to penetrate e-signature services to promote remote work at home. We can take advantage of the mandatory scale POC, proof of concept, to transform the society, and we should use this opportunity to change rules of the society. I will stop here.
All right. I think everyone is talking about the stringent telemedicine regulations that were there in Brazil, which have been relaxed right now, and for Japan also, I understand that they've been relaxed to some extent. And it's good to know that work from home is being promoted across countries, because I think that's the way of new novel of how we are adapting to these times, and it's not that our productivity is being affected. We are just finding more convenient times of working, and we're working almost all round the clock. In fact, it gets difficult for us to draw the line in terms of now the weekend has started or now the work hours have stopped. So somewhere we're all trying to struggle between those work hours. Mr. Rumazawa also mentioned a very important point of public-private partnership and how through the digital stack, these incentives are being tried to being passed on to the end users. I'd like to understand in terms of the country experiences with Brazil and UK on the importance of these public-private partnerships, be it with health tracking or transfer of benefits or setting up of helplines or banking or payments. How has these partnerships paved up, and what role have they taken with their respective roles? So, Ankita, maybe you could take this up first.
So you're asking about public-private partnerships?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that has always been important in the UK. I would say that this has only accelerated, how quickly it has been executed on. But certainly, when it comes to vaccine development, testing, tracking, for example, NHS Digital has launched a new lab to be able to quickly test new startup technologies that could potentially service the entire NHS network. So there are a lot of initiatives, a lot of programs that are looking for new technologies. UKRI has also launched calls for research open calls for research. So you're seeing a number of different programs across sectors that are looking at new ways of working with the private sector and accelerating that, again, to be able to provide strong technology infrastructure to move ahead beyond the pandemic. But I would say healthcare is key, and also transport. When you look at testing and tracking of movement, social distancing, sterilization. These are key sectors where a lot of this work is accelerating more than other sectors, obviously being priority areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that, Ankita. I think I'd like to add one more element before I jump to Jamie in terms of how has the investment scenario been affected. We all know that, the startup shelf life has definitely gone down. A lot of them are struggling right now. But how has this affected the P and VC industry in your respective nations as well? For India, what we saw was that a lot of investors came forward to set up a grant fund for expediting investments into startups that are particularly helping during these COVID times. So they were preventive as well as assisted solutions in which they were investing. There were other investors that have come forward to fast track these investments in the sector which Ankita was just mentioning right now, because this would see them booming right now. But we definitely have seen that investment scenario will be affected. And Jamie, how is the PE and VC industry looking for you in Brazil? And what are those tips that you would want to give to startups to overcome these challenges right now?
Well, it lagged a little bit, but I'm pretty sure that you were addressing about how investors are behaving and if they are committing or not or providing capital in Brazil. So first of all, we need to set up that there are two different kind of investors in the private equity and venture capital industry, right? We have the limited partners, who are the investors that take positions and commit capital to funds, and we have the funds themselves that commit capital to companies. Apex Brazil works with both candidates because we have programs for each of them. When it comes about the investors who commit to funds, to private equity and venture capital funds, we call it the limited partners. We are seeing that there is a position about wait and see. And there is a massive recommendation that they do an exercise with the fund managers, their general partners, who are the VCs, to reevaluate the portfolio companies and understand how they're going to be impacted. Also, there is a massive recommendation that they interview directly the founders of the funds that they have invested, so they can have a more precise and clear figure about how these companies are performing, how they are impacted, how they are challenged, and are asked to be very close to the fund managers to oversee the portfolio. When it comes about the fund managers themselves, it seems that there was a stop in the new investments up to April. The end of April, it was very strong here in Brazil. We have never seen years so glorious and active for the Brazilian venture capital industry as 2018 and 2019. We are celebrating 11 unicorns that have risen in this process out of 3 years and a half, and capital was answering to that. Last year was the best year for investments in the Brazilian ecosystem. We're talking about $202 billion to only Brazilian startups, not talking about the money that was fundraised by Brazilian funds, as the 3 to 5 most strong VCs with proven track record have launched and closed massive raises with international LPs like Kazakh, Monashis, Redpoint Ventures, and some other great performing VCs. Now, what we are seeing is that there is an increasing in the deal flow due to the opportunities and looking for the future and the researchers that are coming. And most probably the activity will come back. The research that I have mentioned to you is making some comparison about what is going on in the US venture capital industry, the Chinese venture capital industry, and the Brazilian industry. And it seems that the activity somehow in the middle of the pandemic went almost to zero, but not zero. And like 1 month after, it is already at 17% out of the activity that they were showing. It seems to be working, and it seems to be returning very quickly.
These are some interesting trends, Damien. I'm surprised to know some of them. Would you be putting them up on your website, or can we access them?
I can share some of them. Yeah, for sure.
That would be very helpful. Thank you. On that note, I think we've seen what the ecosystem is doing right now. We've seen which sectors are booming. We've seen on how the investment landscape is going. What would I'd like all of you now is to help the audience out here with respect to top two tips that you would like to give to the entrepreneurs on how to cope up with these times. But what is it that they would you would advise them to go deep with, and anything that you think would be very helpful for them at this time would be helpful. And if you could also mention any resources that they should be looking at with respect to a particular countries, you may feel to add that as well. Mr. Onozawa, would you want to take a first attempt at this question in terms of resources available for entrepreneurs and your quick two tips for entrepreneurs?
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. I think it's a very difficult time for every company due to the shrink in demand and also the difficulty in cash flow. So maybe entrepreneurs should try to maximize the cash amount. So this is the first thing they have to bear in mind. However, this is a very difficult time. However, every company has to tackle the same stress. So we should be to some extent positive about this situation. So the recession can play the role to screening your rivals. So it's a very good time to scaling up at the same time, and also also they can have more chance to get a finance from VCs. So I think we should not be so negative about this situation, and let's take this difficult situation as an opportunity too.
Thank you, Mr. Onozawa. Ankita, what would be your thoughts on this in terms of your leading tips and resources for the entrepreneurs?
Yeah, Asta, one thing that's I think most important for startups is the product market fit. And I think that more time needs to be taken to make sure product market fit is still relevant today and will be in the post-COVID world. They need to take a long, hard review of the business model to make sure, again, it makes sense in the post-COVID world and today's market. The funding environment has changed, and so companies will need to focus more on the fundamentals. It's a conservative time and it's riddled with change. However, if a startup has pivoted and has seen a very strong uptake with product market fit, and it's also a great time to scale. And I think that there is enough funds available to back that. In terms of connections, platforms from the UK, I would advise startups, especially for the UK, to take advantage of our partners at DIT. They have very strong sector approaches to really advise and provide market intelligence for the UK, for the startup to understand the sector better, to also help make connections to industry and potential partners, as well as there are a lot of incubators, accelerator programs, and landing pads in the UK that allow for global companies. They could be registered anywhere in the world to allow them to participate in some of these programs. Our partners in Tech Hub also run a global program that takes cohorts from India, for example, shortlisted startups to the UK to essentially, again, help accelerate some of their early market access for early stage startups. So I think there are a lot of programs out there. The startup does need to take advantage of this and speak to the right people to get the expertise and also understand ways they can navigate through this time.
Thank you, Ankita. That sure was helpful, and we'll redirect the users to the that you just mentioned. And definitely could not agree more with you in terms of the product market fit. There is definitely a need to test the waters, and the right resources would be available if you are doing well. Jamie, what are your thoughts on this? What are the resources available, and what are the top 2 tips that you would like to give to the entrepreneurs out there?
Well, I think that right now every entrepreneur in the world is suffering and experiencing the same problems, right? So I think it's pretty much going back to the basics, and it's much more about management and skills and focusing. So I really think that people need entrepreneurs and founders need to take care about their human resources. This is very important. So trying to understand what they need and what are the tools that they need to work with, so they can keep the productivity. It's key and crucial. This is something that we are also seeing accelerating, not only with founders or traditional companies, but also with government. It's a real challenge because it's about behavior, not only about tools. Besides, I think that it's really important that all entrepreneurs stop, at least for now, any expenditure with capex investments. Just keep the money for the operational structure that you may need, and be extremely obsessive to keep the liquidity out of the company. Because if you really stop investing on infrastructure needs or projects that may not have a fit to your best performing ROI to services and products, you are going to have more money to have this cash flow and avoid the need to use such debt lines that are being provided by governments. Because even though they are with low interest rates and with great conditions for them to be paid, it's going to be a debt for the company that they don't need if they are doing things right. Yes, so keep a good eye to your human resources, to your team. Provide them with the best tools. Stop capex investments, at least for now, and stay liquid.
Thank you, Jamie. I think some useful tips came out from all 3 of you in terms of managing cash, in terms of maintaining liquidity, in terms of delaying payments, delaying capital expenditures. So I appreciate all these tips for the entrepreneurs. On that front, I'd like to highlight a few innovations that we saw coming from the Indian market during this pandemic, and it was so interesting to see how startups have pivoted. There was this very interesting lady or entrepreneur from IIT Bombay. She was making sanitary pads earlier, but given the equipment that she had from this product, she started and pivoted to making masks and PPE kits, and is doing pretty well right now. We also saw that while the stethoscopes that doctors use, and because they have to sanitize every time before going to the next patient, a startup came up with a Bluetooth device so that doctors do not have to directly touch the stethoscope, and they can hear it very well using a normal earphone and connecting that earphone to the stethoscope. So some of these innovations have really impressed the Indian ecosystem, and I'd like to understand if there is innovation that you came across in particular, be it from any country, and if you would like to highlight those examples, that would be helpful for us as well. Starting with Mr. Onazawa, if you would want to take a shot at it first.
Mm-hmm.
Any innovation that you would want to highlight, given the wave of digitization across the world due to these times?
I see. Oh, thank you. So, as I already mentioned, in Japan, and actually not limited to Japan, or almost every countries experience the mandatory POC, proof of concept, under the lockdown or the request of staying home. And so everybody realized the importance of digitalization of their business. So almost all companies are forced to change their way of business models. So I think Indian startups can have more opportunities to come to Japan and partnering with Japan. And the target market is not limited to Japan, but also to regional and to global, I think. So in that case, for example, I want to take an example of the opportunity of transferring the concept of India Stack to African countries, because this time India verified the success story of direct benefit transfer again under the COVID-19. And last year, I traveled to several African countries and I met several ministers and secretaries, and they already studied about India Stack very much, and they were also fascinated by India Stack achievement. So they are very keen to introduce the similar system or concept of India Stack as well. And if that public platform is installed in several African countries, there is more chance for Indian startups to repeat the similar services in those countries too. And Japan can also play the supplementary role, for example, by providing some cybersecurity technologies and also complementing some hardware, such as building some data centers or building some submarine cables or like that. So Japan and India startups can be a good partner, and yes, there are many opportunities.
Yeah, thank you. I think you're absolutely right. India Stack definitely possesses a huge potential. For the benefit of all, India Stack offers a digital platform for technology for 1.2 billion users, where you can directly sync APIs, be it for KYC, UPI, DigiLocker, Aadhaar, or eSign. And I absolutely agree with you. And I'm interested to see how this will scale up in Africa as well. So looking forward to those examples as well. Ankita, coming to you now, are there any innovations that you would like to highlight that you may have come across in the recent times?
Yeah, I think there were many innovations we came across in the last few months, low tech as well as high tech. For example, with healthcare AI, we've seen AI being used for radiology to determine from lung scans and X-rays and CT scans, doing some kind of COVID diagnosis. Also trying to use mobile phones as an easy way to diagnose from the sound of your cough. A lot of AI startups working on that as well, which is also interesting given that testing is critical at scale and at low cost. So innovative solutions around AI, we're seeing innovative solutions around also supply chain distribution, food distribution in India, to be able to be accessed very easily and effectively, a system using AI and blockchain. So we're seeing interesting business models come out. Another interesting idea that came about was an app wherein every sort of roadside radiwala, the guys selling vegetables, etc., were all listed on an online marketplace, an app. And so you could sort of crowdsource delivery and ease the entire supply chain right from the farm to the actual consumer. I think India's announcements of reforms has also been able to spark a lot of new innovations and also help accelerate a lot of these agri-tech type innovations much faster. So I think in the next year, we should see very innovative startups and solutions being deployed in the market. So it's an interesting time, certainly. And I always say that in the last 10 years, startups have been innovating to create the tech infrastructure and the technology apps, etc., that today we use every day, which we really wouldn't survive lockdown as we have if it not had been for all the technology that the India Stack had brought about, easy payments, Amazon and Flipkart for delivery, and other Swiggies, etc., for home delivery. So it's Netflix, for example, consuming content, edutech, telemedicine. These are all startups 10 years ago, and they've become the massive companies that are providing ease and convenience during this lockdown. So a lot of great innovations, and I think time will tell which will stand through to a post-COVID world.
Yeah. But I think you've mentioned two great examples here. One is the startups that were, back 10 years back are now proving to be very useful for us, all the users of all these technologies right now. But another great point that you highlighted was how these small, um, the bottom of the pyramid is now coming and being affected by this digitization layer, and that I see will go a long way in the entire journey of digitization. And it's even our local vendors, our essential supply deliveries are all being put together on these digital platforms. So that's a massive change that we are seeing. Yes. uh, Jamie, coming to you, how are things looking in Brazil? What are the key innovations that you would have come across? And Brazil has been, advanced with technologies that they've, brought to the forefront. Were there some lighting technologies and innovations that came forth during these times?
Well, we are seeing a lot of people using robots for disinfection out of environments and places, avoiding people to be there directly. It's a safety measure, and also it's much more effective. We are also seeing a lot of entrepreneurs trying to do the ventilators much more cheaper, and many of them are using 3D printing to provide the parts and the components. You know that one of the trends that we're seeing, not only for startups but for manufacturing in the world, it is that the Chinese model of having all the industry and then getting to the full worldwide as trading, it will no longer stay. We are seeing how challenging it is this, because even though they have the productivity and take all the measures, when it comes about transportations and pandemics, it is a challenge. So we are going to see that there's going to be a massive expansion of sub-regional clusters of production of medical equipment, so pharma, and many other industries, to guarantee the safety out of the production and the logistics for this. This is one of the opportunities that people are preparing to see and are demanding. Besides 3D printing and these solutions for disinfection, I would say that artificial intelligence is playing a magical role here. We are seeing applied in conjunction with telecom, so it can provide the numbers of isolation of people moving or not, respecting staying home or not. We are also seeing modelings providing where we should be paying attention more due to the cases of infection and deaths, how we can prepare our seats to better answer that, and also for the diagnosis out of the cases, right? We are seeing many startups trying to make artificial solutions that take the images out of the tomographies to understand how the disease will evolve and whether this patient should be going for intensive care very soon and should be with a yellow flag or a green flag. So this is really important, and we are seeing that solutions already operational.
Very interesting. I think AI, 3D printing, deep tech is the way forward, and the examples that you have mentioned are definitely, going to disrupt the landscape that we see out here. At this point, I'm going to take one audience question. Mr. Shrikant wants to know from all the panelists, are there any opportunities for Indian tech startups to explore business in Brazil, UK, and Japan, especially any POC opportunities? If yes, how we can approach them? Mr. Onozawa, I'd like to know from you first on these opportunities, especially any POC opportunities, and how they can approach.
Thank you very much for the question. I think, as I first mentioned, the key is to finding a very good Japanese partners. And under my ministry, there's another organization that is JETRO, Japan External Trade Organization. That is a PSU of my ministry. So you can approach to that organization, and they can help you to come into Japan. And there are many ways they can support. For example, they have a good track record of supporting many Indian companies such as Oyo, Baimo, Ankani Visions, who entered into Japan or are trying to expand their business in Japan very soon. And how they help the Indian companies are several ways. For example, JETRO supports visa issuance and offering a free tentative office space in Tokyo too. And there is an Indian guy whose name is Swastik, Mr. Swastik, who can speak both Japanese and English very fluently, and who has a very good knowledge about how the business will go along in Japan. So yeah, I recommend you to approach to me or Mr. Sostek. Yeah, I can connect you to those contact person.
Thank you, Mr. Unazawa. How, I think the next question would be, how do people get in touch with Mr. Sostek and you? Do you want to give any common ID, or they can get it on JETRO's website?
Yeah, actually, if you successfully find a Japanese partner, actually there is some subsidy scheme to help you make a proof of concept. Yes, the maximum amount is around 0.1 million US dollar. So yeah, so if you successfully find a partner, you can move on to the next stage. So anyway, please first contact us.
Thank you. That was very helpful. Thank you. Jamie, coming to you, apart from the opportunities for startups to explore Brazil as a market, Pritish Parekh also want to know what are the sectors that would particularly be helpful for Brazil as an ecosystem and are expected to bloom.
Okay, I think that we have here kind of 3 questions, so I'll try to go through them. The activity of corporate venture, which is totally based on open innovation concept, was almost inexistent in Brazil back to 2014. That reality has completely changed in the past 3 years. If we were talking about only 3 to 4 corporates that had a CVC fund to invest and work with startups, and a couple of them working with open innovation platforms and programs, now we are talking about more than 200 corporates in Brazil. Should they be Brazilian or multinationals operating in Brazil with their programs, that have launched funds, that have launched acceleration programs, that have launched their own open innovation platforms. This is a reality. That's why we have founded a project called Corporate Venture in Brazil to support big corps to tackle with the Brazilian ecosystem. But we have learned by the Apex view that we need to provide further assistance to the entrepreneurs in an international level and the corporations in Brazil that were looking for new tech needs and subvention out of the governmental programs. So right now we are launching a new program that is already pre-operational with Israel, call it Tech Maker, where we are connecting companies that are looking for technology from Brazil with the countries that we are partnering. You may ask, how can we do that from India? Brazil and India are very, when it comes about the tech ecosystems, are beginning to interact and to understand each other. I could see, as we speak, that there is a lot of fit for mobility solutions. There are a lot of fintech solutions, depending on the regulation. That's something that we need to understand very well and soon to avoid failure. And I would say that there is a natural path for agri-tech solutions. Both countries are subtropical regional leaders in agri-crop productions, and perhaps thinking about what are the crops that you are developing in India and what are the solutions that you are delivering that could have a fit for Brazil. It's a good way to think about how to do a first approach. For POCs, we have 3 main players here in Brazil. They are FINAP, Embrapi, and BNDES. Embrapi is the one that is related for TRL 326, and it is our partner for the resources of this project called Tech Maker. We already have pre-screened 10 countries that we're going to be opening up the program. It is based on international cooperation call for proposals each year, and there is some amount that we save so that we can do the subvention by the Brazilian side out of a third out of the commitment, and some partners from their side are doing a third or 50% out of the project from their side. So the company will need only to invest a third, or sometimes even lower than this for the costs out of the project that they are they are looking to develop. What more? POCs, sectors, and ways in Brazil and India. I think I have covered everything.
You have. Thank you so much. And you handled that pretty well. Thank you for highlighting all those facts. Ankita, coming to you, what are the opportunities and what are the sectors you feel blooming? I think you covered the sectors part, but you can touch them upon again.
Yeah, I'll just actually cover sectors. I mean, even pre-COVID, that the UK has been focusing on in terms of funding and really just a larger focus on the ecosystem in the UK. This is AI and data science. As you know, the UK is amongst the top 3 in the world in AI. They have about 1,000 plus AI startups in the UK, and they're really investing into upskilling as well as creating a strong ecosystem for growth in AI. I would say fintech, it's the financial capital of the world, London. It's number 2 in terms of fintech in the world as an innovator. So I would see just a strong parallel over there. Other focus areas are also future mobility, clean energy, healthcare, and especially technology around the aging. So these are hot sectors. Obviously, COVID has created other sectors as well that we spoke about. But I would say that the UK is quite an open market. There's a lot of early adopters of emerging technologies. So it's a great place to test out a POC to get early product market fit. They have very supportive public policy environment, access to growth capital, and also great trade support for access to other EU nations. So it could be a very good enabler for growth of tech as an additional market that a startup may look to.
Thank you, Ankita. Helpful again, and I'm sure fintech will continue to boom, and UK is taking the lead already. And we hope that Indian startups would also get to expand and get the right support. On that note, looking at the time, we've got some great insights from all of you, some great measures on what the countries are doing. I'd like just to open the floor right now for closing remarks. We'd like to hear from Mr. Kaichi Ozawa first on your closing remarks.
Yeah, sure. I think we should convert this difficult situation into a chance. Remember that several unicorns were founded under the global financial crisis since 2008. For example, WhatsApp is founded in 2008, and Uber is founded in 2009. Instagram is founded in 2010. So the recession plays a role to screening out rivals. The market will be less competitive. You have more chance to get access to scaling up finance. Also remember, after the global finance crisis, many IT professionals in Silicon Valley came back to India, and they boosted India's startup ecosystem. There is some chance we can expect a similar movement will happen again this time. And Japan is keen to collaborate with India. So let's change the world together. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think you've highlighted a very well point in problem lies in opportunity, and we hope that we will come stronger and emerge stronger from these problematic times as well. Thank you, Mr. Ozawa. Ankita, what would be your parting thoughts?
So Asta, I mean, if you look at any sector today, you will see new business models emerging, whether it's real estate, work from home, transport, health, wellness, education, travel. Each sector is defining the new normal, and then new innovations springing up. So I think it's a very exciting time to be a technology startup and to be in the tech ecosystem. I think it's important, again, I'll mention product market fit, because that is changing quite rapidly. And really look towards strong fundamentals and a strong business model to take you through the next few years to really emerge out a winner.
Absolutely. I think it is survival of the fittest, and strong fundamentals will take you a long way in this journey. Thank you, Ankita. Jamie, over to you now. What would be your closing remarks and comments?
Okay, so really thank you for the invitation. It was a pleasure here to be discussing with you and have this global overview about such markets that are all thriving and the cooperation. As I have said before, I really think that Brazilian and Indians should be closer and understand what are the cultural differences in terms of doing business. That's really important. We are getting close, much close to the Israeli culture, and we have learned an important trait that we need to address in our programs. When a Brazilian say yes, not all times a yes, and not all of the times it's a no. And for Israeli, yes is yes, and no is no. So you need to understand these changes so that you can really do business and understand how the pace of negotiations go. We have a lot of differences between Brazilians and Indians and how you behave in business and with technology. We need to understand each other to avoid mistakes and to do assertive business. I believe that a natural pace for us to integrate more, it would be working through corporations that are already operational in both countries. I would list, I don't know, Aditya Birla, Mahindra, Tata Group, some of the groups that I know that are doing some open innovation in India and perhaps could expand these programs and accelerate Indian companies here in Brazil with the support of the Brazilian team. This is a natural path, but I really think there are other ways that we should be working with. Well, I think it's this. I really thank you and I appreciate for the invitation.
Thank you, Jamie. It was a pleasure to have you all. In the end, I'd like to thank you all again for joining us for this session. I'm sure the entrepreneurs found great value from it. If you have any questions for any of these panelists or for Startup India, please feel free to reach out to us at dipp-startups@nic.in. You may see this ID coming at the bottom of the screens as well, and we'll be able to take them further or connect you with any one of these panelists. Thank you once again, everyone, for joining us, and it was a great session. Thank you.
Thank you.